Hi, I'm Robert Drexler and I'm the Finance Director for Bullhead City. And I'm here today to answer some questions about Proposition 416 and the permanent base adjustment. Proposition 416 is asking the voters of Bullhead City whether or not to approve a permanent base adjustment to the city's expenditure limitation. So the state of Arizona imposed expenditure limitations on all cities back in 1980. They established a base expenditure limitation that had a foundation for how much money every city can spend in an annual year. The current Bullhead City expenditure limitation is $64,120,000. And this comes from taking the city's base expenditure limitation started in 1984 with inflation and population change factors calculated into it every year. The city has come within $100,000 the last 2 fiscal years of going over its expenditure limitation. If a city goes over expenditure limitation, they'll lose out on future state shared revenues. Bullhead City has relied on grants and short-term borrowing the last couple of years to stay under the spending cap. Grants are not always readily available for the specific projects that the city may want to do, and borrowing or bonding for projects cost additional monies in issuance costs that are the costs that it takes to actually administer and sell the bonds, as well as interest costs. We've determined that issuance costs add about 1% to the interest costs. So if Proposition 416 is passed by the voters, that'll add $10 million to the city's base expenditure limitation, making the new expenditure limit $180,840,000. The city is growing, and the city is anticipating a lot of future development, while the city is also at an all-time sales tax collection high. With that, we picked the number of $10 million through an analysis of looking out 20 and 30 years into the future with the future growth and future expenses, and we believe that with the increases to the expenditure limitation, the city will not need to go back to the voters to ask for an additional increase to its expenditure limitation. If the city does need to do that at some point, they will have to go to the voters for that approval. Proposition 416 is just an adjustment to the city's expenditure limitation. It does not impose any new taxes or raise any taxes for the citizens of Bullhead City. Bullhead City is only one of 8 cities in the entire state that is not operating with an adjustment to its expenditure limitation. 83 of the 91 cities in Arizona are operating with an adjustment to their expenditure limitation, and this includes Lake Havasu City and the city of Kingman. The city has several safeguards in place for overspending. First, the city is required by state law to have a balanced budget, which means they can't spend more money than we have. The city also has a fund balance reserve policy, which is basically saying the city needs to keep so much in savings. The city is required to keep 3 months of operations in savings, and currently the city has 9 months, 3 times more than our requirement. The city also decides in full transparency to have a line item budget that goes through every single line in expenditure for the fiscal year. The city has several public hearings, and the adopted budget is done by council in a public meeting. The city also goes through an annual audit every year that verifies that the city is spending the money in accordance with state laws. A yes vote on Proposition 416 will give the City Council the flexibility to decide what type of financing sources it would like to use on projects, like grants, borrowing, or cash on hand. A no vote for Proposition 416 will keep the expenditure limitation as it is, and the city will have to decide on taking out loans for projects that would otherwise put us over the expenditure limitation. Thank you for your time today. If you have more questions and want more information, please visit the Bullhead City website at bullheadcity.com/prop416.